Biting cold, rain and sleet greeted competitors as they prepared for the 7 o'clock start. Ahead of them lay 400 kilometers of tough racing in the most extreme conditions. Off-road racing certainly isn't for sissies.
We managed to put on pole together with a Ford, so it should be an interesting race, but I think it's going to favour the 4x4s with this sort of rain and mud. It's cold conditions, we don't have a windscreen, they've got a windscreen, they do have an advantage. I think we're probably going to let the Ford go, let them make the track. We'll just follow behind and see how it goes from there.
Not the ideal place I want to start. I normally like to come from behind, but maybe in the conditions today with it being so wet and muddy, maybe it's not a bad thing to start first.
Since when did off-road racing become a drag race? Anyway, Woolridge and Skolthammer, with the advantage of four-wheel drive, got the whole shot on the Bertholds and powered away. De Villiers and Jordan were next away and intent on closing the 31-second gap that the Mareka Ford Bear had on them. The former multiple touring car champion has taken to the dirt like a duck to water, and pundits are positioning him as the heir apparent to Cyril van der Merwe. It's a case of watch this space. Carolyn and Testega had the advantage over the gaggle of special vehicles starting behind them, in that they had the benefit of four-wheel drive and a windscreen. What follows now is a sequence of onboard action from the De Villiers Nissan and the Woolridge Ford. First, De Villiers passed the Bertholds and then sets off in pursuit of the leader. The conditions were far from ideal, but the Mareka Ford Ranger handled the jumps without a problem. De Villiers now had the bit firmly between his teeth and rapidly closed on the Ford. This shortcut gave the Nissan Star the lead, and one wonders what Woolridge felt about this cheeky move. Then De Villiers threw away his lead by getting it all wrong. An untimely encounter with a gatepost cost him the lead, and extricating the Nissan from the fencing and stalling the V6 motor cost him valuable time. "40 minutes into the Queen Motorspares Tarka 400, Woolridge and Skolthammer in the Mareka Ford Ranger had a slender lead over De Villiers and Jordan in the Nissan hardbody. Interestingly, some sections of the route were bone dry and dusty, while others like this section were wet and extremely slippery. This power play between the rival teams was a clear indication that the Ford was not necessarily superior to the Nissan. While the Ford and the Nissan were locked in battle, the Bertholds in the M&E Glass Dirt Co had a firm grip on the special vehicle category lead and were just waiting for the leading pair to put a wheel wrong. Queenstown-based Greg Harvey and Boy Stone were having a good run in the Lexus V8-powered Queen Motorspares Jimco, but were being hauled in by production vehicle championship contenders Bucks Carolyn and Henny Testega in the Mitsubishi Pajero. Chebek Sr. and Stephen Parker, a former off-road racing driver now occupying the co-driver's seat for the first time, had gained 2 places in the V-Motors Chenoweth. But they had John Weir-Smith and Jeff Minnett in the O'Hagan's Kopanong Hotel Jimco hot on their heels. Weir-Smith couldn't relax for 1 second because the Breckel brothers in the Brasco Refrigeration Raceco were closing in on the Porsche-powered Jimco. Terrence Marsh made his special vehicle debut earlier this season and was running in the top 10 in the CommuterNet Raceco. The early Class D leaders were the Northwest Province farmers Pitt Hasbrook and Christo Bosch in the Castrol Toyota Land Cruiser. There was a battle raging for the Class B lead. Frikkie Buerta in the WPP Wingfoot had moved ahead of the Besaidenotes, who were in hot pursuit with reigning Class B champion Gil Nel nowhere to be seen. Reigning Class D champions Hein Grobler and Gerard Prinsloo were second in Class D in the Nissan hardbody, but had Steve Weiheld and Jean-Pierre Joubert in the ex-Woolridge M1 4x4 Pajero right on their tail. Back to the leaders, and you're on board with De Villiers and Jordan in the Nissan as they close in and overtake the Mareka Ford Ranger. Quite clearly, the Nissan has the edge when it came to top speed, but the Ford came out on top in the Torque Stakes. Some 20 youngsters awaited the arrival of the rest of the field. First to arrive, and in third place, were Carolyn and Testega in the Pajero, with Carolyn complaining afterwards that he only saw 2 competitors throughout the race. The Bertolds retired their Dirtco, and the new special vehicle category leaders were Chepek Sr. and Parker in the V-Motors Chenoweth. Competent driving and immaculate preparation has proved to be a winning combination. Greg Harvey was intent on ridding himself of his bridesmaid's mantle and was determined to beat Franz Chepek Sr., his arch-rival for many years. John Weir Smith acquired Shamir Wariawa's 2000 championship-winning Jimco, but the vehicle has been plagued by mechanical problems in recent events. Soon after this point, he retired when a conrod punched a hole in the block of the Porsche engine. Andrew and Chris Perkin had a firm grip on the Class E lead, but they were being chased hard by veteran rally and off-road driver Kasi Kutsia and Aki Fari in the much-improved Castrol Toyota Condor that made its debut at the start of the season. Manfred Schroeder and Jack Peckham in the diesel-powered Class E Mareka Ford Ranger were well placed in third position and within striking distance of Birkin and Kutsia. Predictably, Mr. Consistency, Gil Nel, had taken the Class B lead in the Look Africa Truggy. The wily Gauteng-based veteran had systematically overtaken his rivals like Bez and Dion Besaidnout and would go on to win the class. KTM Works rider Elmer Simons had set the fastest time in Friday's time trial and was leading midway through the first loop. Graham McLaughlin on the open class Miller Moore Racing KTM started 11 seconds behind Simons and at this point was lying a comfortable second. Winner of 3 races this season, Clayton Enslin was third on the 250 Shimwell's Yamaha and closing in on the 2 riders ahead of him. 38-year-old multiple champion and Dakar star Alfie Cox had moved up from 8th to 4th on the 500 Natro Freight Castrol KTM. KwaZulu-Natal rider Barry Krill had taken the Works KTM up to 5th place and was leading the competitive 200 class. A bit of a moment here for Daryl Curtis. The Gauteng-based rider switched from KTM to Gas this season and would eventually finish 8th. The ever-spectacular Jacques Struvik held a slender lead in the quad class. The Bombardier rider had yet to win a race this season. His teammate and championship leader Cornel de Villiers had so far won 3 out of 4 races and was intent on picking up another win in the Tarka 400. Third place was held by another Bombardier rider, Sean Gunter, who would eventually retire from the race. The designated service point was located at the Tarka Stud Showgrounds, and as always there was a hive of activity as technicians made hasty repairs and crews took a well-earned break after 200 kilometers of driving. Ahead of them lay another lap of 200 kilometers. The Mareka Ford Ranger of Woolwich and Skoldhammer was still in the lead. A brief stop at the service point to allow technicians to check key components didn't cost them too much time. Neil de Villiers and Francois Jordan had picked up 2 punctures on the Nissan hardbody and were on a charge to try and make up some time on the Ford. Franz Chepek and Stephen Parker had matters well under control in the special vehicle category. So far, the V-Motors Chenoweth had not missed a beat. Marius Bursma and Chris Peturius were still on their first loop in the ex-Cliff Barker Land Rover V8, and their dust created a visibility problem for 4th place Bucks Carolyn, another driver who had experienced 2 punctures. Rookie special vehicle driver Terence Marsh and Trevor Ahir were 5th overall in the Commuternet Raceco, a position they would hold until the finish. Mark Corbett and Juan Moore had moved into the Class D lead in the Petronas Sinjamai Suzu, and a 3rd consecutive class win appeared likely. 7th place privateers Cliff Whiteheld and Johan Smalberger were having their best run of the season in the Lexus V8-powered N1 4x4 Toyota Land Cruiser.
Tell us what the problem is.
I've got a terrible cramping of my muscle in my left shoulder. I stopped for a quick injection. Now I'm getting back in the car and hopefully going to ride further.
Co-driver Boy Stone had had a rare opportunity to drive the Lexus V8-powered Queen Motorspares Jimco, but now it was again Harvey's turn at the wheel. Fortunately, Harvey's chest cramps subsided, and they went on to finish 3rd in the special vehicle category and 8th overall. Two punctures and a broken steering pump belt cost R.P. Reiniger and Robin Houghton a lot of time. Changes to the Castrol Toyota Land Cruiser had been successful, and the pair eventually finished 10th overall and 7th in the production vehicle category. Other than panel damage from an encounter with a fence, the race leaders Neil Woolridge and Kenny Skolthammer had not had any problems with the Mareka Ford Ranger. The finish of the Queen Motorspares Tarka 400 and a dream debut for the French-built vehicle, and another 35 points for Woolridge and Skolthammer. A post-race technical inspection by MSA officials found the Ford to be eligible, and the results stand.
We had a good dice with the Nissan, and I think now that we're coming to a gunfight with a gun, it's proved that it's very competitive. Kenil and I were passing each other all morning, and then I think he had a puncher, and I think he's about a puncher in time behind us, so it proves that we've got two very competitive cars, and it's going to be great for racing in South Africa.
De Villiers and Jordan finished second overall, 4 minutes and 33 seconds behind the Ford, having lost over 6 minutes due to punctures.
I must say I enjoyed the event quite a lot. In the beginning, the Ford and I had a nice dice. I mean, we passed each other a couple of times on the route. And then when we got stuck behind him, we were right behind him, and we got a puncture. So he got a 3-minute lead on us. And then after the pits, we got another puncture. So he had a clean run, we had 2 punctures. But it was a good race for us.
Third overall and a record 6th special vehicle category win went to Franz Chepek Sr. and Stephen Parker in the V-Motors Chenoweth. Clearly the opposition have no answer for Chepek, who has been racing off-road cars and motorcycles since 1970.
Makes it now 6 in a row, which is our record. Last race made it 5 in a row, which was the record then. This is a new record again, and like somebody else to beat that one.
It would be a 3rd consecutive Class D victory for the Petronas St. Isuzu of Mark Corbett and Juan Moore.
The race was very rough. In the morning, about 5 k's from the start, we had our first puncture, so we got quite concerned. Then we dropped back about 15 places. And then from there, we had to push quite hard. But the big problem with the Bucky is every time you see one of these big bumps, you just see air and then you just see ground. It's extremely rough.
The Class E win went to Manfred Schroeder and Jack Peckham in the diesel-powered Mareka Ford Ranger. Kasi Gutsia and Aki Fari finished just over a minute behind in the Castrol Toyota Condor.
Today we had a good run. First lap we paced ourselves to Kasi. The Birkins are quite a bit quicker than us. And I said to Jack that second lap we'll go for it and then try and pass Kasi, which we did. And we just managed to stay ahead of him but to a finish.
The Class B win went to Hill Nell in the Look Africa Truckie, the only finisher in the class.
We here, it was tough, it was nice, it was cold. With no windscreen it doesn't really help. Otherwise it was fun and a very nice race.
2 class wins for the Mareka Ford team and a welcome return to form for Cliff Weichelt and Api Reneker. The Zamatin brothers put in another consistent run to finish in the top 10. On the special vehicle front, only 6 of the original starters made it to the finish line. A podium finish for rookies Marsh and Ahir, and a sterling effort from 4th place finishers Ferguson and Swart. 38-year-old Alfie Cox proved the critics wrong by coming from behind to win the event overall.
Had a very bad time trial, 8th on the road, 2 minutes behind the leaders. But I knew because of the rain yesterday, it's going to be one hell of a race. And we've been neck and neck the whole way, and I managed to pull away from the last refuel home, the last 60, 70 Ks. But I'm happy to win again. We had 3 seconds and a win, and to come back and do another win, I'm very happy.
Age and cunning triumphed in the end. Clayton Enslin finished second, almost 2 minutes behind Cox. KTM dominated proceedings with 7 finishes in the top 10. Cornel de Villiers picked up his 4th overall win of the season on his Bombardier. His was the class act in a quality quad field that was totally dominated by Bombardiers.
It's a very strong bike. It is virtually unbreakable. The motor is strong, the frame is strong. It's indestructible.
De Villiers finished 18 minutes ahead of Gas rider Brandon Martin and just short of 24 minutes ahead of 3rd place Bombardier teammate Jacques Struve.